and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Just when I thought Bernie Sanders couldn't hit a new low, a lot happened yesterday, and I have to say I was surprised and shocked. But then again, Bernie Sanders is a Democrat through and through, and it hurts my heart to see this, but there's a lot to unpack here because even the activists in this are a little bit questionable too. And the shocking photo of solidarity is a little bit interesting as well. But nonetheless, let's first start off with our good friend Bernie Sanders, because what recently happened by Bernie the Cuck Sanders, the man who allowed the DNC to commit election fraud and basically screw over his campaigns in 2016 and 2020 and did nothing to fight for his volunteers and supporters. Well, Bernie Sanders decides to get 11 people arrested in protests at Senator Bernie Sanders' office over the war in Ukraine. So, hey, it's Code Pink. You know, what I do have to say, though, especially with people like Code Pink, most notably, we see Medea Benjamin there, is I do remember her at that squad event that was covered by Colin Radix Carter. And yes, we did cover it here on Hard Lens Media. And I did interview Colin Radix Carter as well when he covered that event. And, he brought up not one, but two very good questions towards the squad members consisting of Jamal Bowman, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, Corey Bush, Ayanna Presley, and everybody's personal favorite, AOC. And she was utterly silent. But here, okay, I'm calling out Bernie Sanders. All right. So 11 anti-war protesters were arrested Wednesday after they occupied the office of Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent, quote unquote, from Vermont on Capitol Hill to demand the senator support efforts at diplomacy over sending further U.S. aid such as weapons to Ukraine. Bernie Sanders being pro-war. Who knew? Who knew? Capitol Police arrested the 11 people inside the Dirksen Senate office building under a D.C. code that prohibits crowding, obstructing, or accommodating a Capitol Police spokesperson said. The code is often cited when arresting protesters during peaceful planned acts of civil disobedience. Oh my goodness gracious, Cretaceous. Bernie, how could you? We thought we knew you. Though protesters who were with the anti-war group Code Pink were advocating for Ukrainian, Russian, and U.S. leadership to negotiate an end to the war, the group said in a news release. Yes, Bernie should condemn the Russian invasion, but he should also be calling for a negotiated end to this brutal war. Crystal Zevon from Barrett, Vermont said in a news release. Oh my goodness. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, Washington has pledged more than, look at this, $46 billion in military, humanitarian, and yes, financial assistance to Ukraine. But the people of Maui get only a one-time $700 payment. People of East Palestine, Ohio, you're on your own. Flint, Michigan, clean drinking water. What will you ever do with that? And any other city or small town in the good old US of A, be it a red state or a blue state? You really think anyone in Washington, D.C. cares about you? Because they don't. Oh, my goodness. So here, let's actually pull this up here, because it is rather fascinating and depressing in many ways to see how this is all playing.
Vermonters want peace.
Do you have any comment?
I'm from Vermont, and I voted for Bernie every time from Congress on. I wasn't there when he was mayor, but I worked for him and his campaign. I believed in him, and he has crushed all my hopes for some kind of sanity within his building.
I think we all learned that lesson. These politicians are not heroes. They're politicians. Flawed individuals. I hesitate to say that they're human, but they look the part. But I do question whether or not they are human. But Bernie, so many people believed in your message. What's so pathetic is that you had lightning in the bottle and you threw it away, buddy.
Recently tweeted out that he wants to see more funding go to Ukraine a couple of days ago. Can I get any reaction to that?
I'm horrified. I watched the carnage going on over there. And how can anyone say this is good? Cluster bombs. We're on the brink of nuclear war. How can he not all the things he says. How can he not?
Why are they arresting you?
Thank you for holding up a sign, a quote from Bernie Sanders calling for dialogue. In Bernie Sanders' office, they seem to suggest that war is solidarity, which is madness, how they're co-opting the language of peace and liberation to lead us to World War III. It's crazy. They're so out of touch, not just with American people, but with the entire world. And this guy is supposed to be the progressive hero.
Yeah. Hey, first time, baby. It must be your first time. It's okay. It's okay. Breathe and drink water because, again, this isn't the first time Bernie Sanders' hypocrisy has been shown. And I encourage all of you to check out our conversations that I have had with Do Dissident and RBN for our post-duopoly show that's hosted on the Revolutionary Blackout Network channel, where we have gone into detail about Bernie Sanders, and both Russell and Crean have brought in a great insight into overall Bernie Sanders. And, well, for the fact is that I think a lot of us got tricked, myself included. And just for the record, I know Hardlin's media in the past, in the early days, from the beginning, even we ourselves, even before the 2020 election, were impressed with Bernie Sanders. I guess we didn't see it as well. And I say this now and forever. I regret any kind of positive coverage or kind word I ever said about Bernie. I'm very, very, very sorry. I regret it, and I take it all back. Truly, I do.
Yeah, what do we need Bernie to do?
We really just need him to step aside and leave room for other people who are actually going to fight for us, who are going to fight for peace. Because he obviously isn't courageous enough to fight for peace.
Peace.
Yeah, because Bernie's a cuck. That's what he is. The man is a cuck. He's a cuck.
To end the war in Ukraine, end U.S. funding for the war, no funding for war, funding for health care.
Jimmy Lee is from Burlington, Vermont. He's a constituent of Bernie Sanders getting arrested. Right here.
What are we demanding Bernie do, Jimmy?
We want him to end the war, speak out against the war. If he spoke out against the war, it would make a huge difference. It would make a huge difference.
He can't do that. Sorry, buddy. Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, is nothing more than a loyal, obedient servant to the neoliberal Democratic establishment. Senator Bernie Sanders is good friends with his buddy, his pal. You know him, but he doesn't know you or where he's at. The guy who asks, "Who crapped my pants?" Joe 30330. That's Bernie's good friend. Remember, Bernie Sanders said that.
He's lined up for using and abusing Ukrainians. And he's been supporting using and abusing Vermonters who live in the terrible noise zone of the F-35 at the airport. 115 decibel F-35 taking off and landing in a city, it's a crime. And Bernie supports that. He's the supporter of assaulting people.
We need peace.
1,000 children live in that noise zone.
Shame.
What a shame indeed. But that's who Bernie Sanders is.
Bernie is for diplomacy. I'm here to remind him that he knows diplomacy is the right thing. He knows peace is the right thing. I'm here to tell him he needs to call on Biden to go to the negotiating table. Don't tell us to Putin. Okay, you're just telling another one arrested for holding Bernie's quote. Thank you. Who else was?
Now, I do want to acknowledge a live stream super chat. And Courtney L. Conover, I like to tell a story, so let me explain. First, it's important to show what was happening there. But Code Pink's actions in this event are also questionable. I want to bring this up here. You're smarter than this. Thank you. Medea went here knowing certain areas were illegal and faked arrests immediately dismissed for press coverage. This had nothing to do with Bernie. Precisely. However, we will witness Code Pink's own hypocrisy as well. It's important to tell the story and to share it with everybody so that way we all see firsthand. All in all, this has been one big show. Now, of course, Bernie Sanders is a mediocre politician, but a lot of these activist groups too, including Code Pink, where were you guys from the beginning? So we see these arrests taking place. We see it happen. We see it happening in real time. However, something happened. Something happened that really kind of caused me to raise a few eyebrows, especially with Code Pink's previous actions. Shout out to No More Donations. Hold up. You constantly give tongue baths to fraudster AOC, who is on record for voting in favor of funding and arming Ukraine, the opposite of peace. But you're distancing yourself from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who correctly opposes funding Ukraine. You folks should change your name to Code Clown. Wait a minute, Marjorie Taylor Greene? What does MTG has to do with AOC? What's going on? Because again, check this out. Code Pink. Not too long ago, way back in 2019. Simpler, innocent times. Indeed. AOC's leadership on the Green New Deal has inspired us to take our activism to the next level, which means they went to take a nap. Now, look, perhaps some of those people who got arrested really do believe in what they're doing. But again, they are free now. Maybe it was one big show. But again, Bernie Sanders and other Democratic lawmakers' actions do need to be brought to attention. And seeing this imagery, it does remind all of us, really, on how much a clown show the activist and progressive groups are, especially when they associate themselves with Democratic lawmakers, like how Code Pink is doing with AOC. By the way, I just have to bring up this sign here. AOC, feminism, not militarism. We'll make a controversial statement in 3, 2, 1. To those who still believe in the feminist movement, look, I'm not going to mansplain, but you know what that means. I'm going to mansplain here. Look, yeah, you guys might have to reset that movement. Just look. You've gone far in a lot of areas, okay? And you got yourselves intertwined with the Democratic neoliberal establishment. Now, if that was something you guys wanted to do, ladies, then all right, have at it. But, you know, I just got to say, you've been off the mark just a little bit. You might have to do a group meeting, be like, hold on, this stuff we're asking for. Call for more war, but saying, all this other stuff. Because again, AOC has been voting for war, but yet here she is holding the sign, feminism, not militarism. Okay. And then, of course, AOC ripped the town hall over Ukraine votes. That's when Jose Vega called her out. But that was violent. That was deemed as mean. Very mean. Very mean indeed. So let's talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene, okay? Because apparently Marjorie Taylor Greene, well, she actually did something. Now, again, be very clear here. She's a Republican lawmaker, and again, Democratic and Republican lawmakers are intertwined with the military-industrial complex, Big Pharma, the prison-industrial complex. They're all in for it. So, yes, we've seen Republican lawmakers say they want to end the funding to Ukraine, which I will agree with. But if you think they're going to be ending the military-industrial complex anytime soon, look at me. Look at me. Look at me. That ain't happening. So let's pull this up here. Bernie Sanders gets out-lefted by Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I want to pull this up here. The war in Ukraine must end. I agree with MTG on that. MTG, you know me. Today I met the brave Code Pink activist. Well, come on. Oh, MTG, you are being far too kind. Activists who protested for peace in Bernie's office. He had 11 of them arrested. Goodness gracious, Cretaceous. Peace and free speech shouldn't be a partisan issue. We don't fully agree on most things, but we do agree Congress should stop fueling the war in Ukraine. And look, hey, look at that. Hey, we could all get along. I like that. I like that image right there. Ukraine is not the 51st state. Last I checked, it's not. So MTG, you know me. Well done. Well done. And of course, shout out to Max Blumenthal. This kind of unity is what terrifies the U.S. war state. And again, it's good to see this. However, here's where Code Pink's hypocrisy comes in. because, oh no, oh my goodness, a Republican lawmaker is by Code Pink, that liberal progressive group. What's going on? So Code Pink had to correct the record because, like, let's face it, right here, we see this image. Look, she's right there with them. Isn't that nice? But Code Pink had to tweet this out. Questions upon questions upon questions. There has hold on. Let me do the voice perfect for this. Because again, folks, 2024 is going to be a great year. It's not going to be the most important election year of our lifetime, but it will be probably the most fun. Okay? I think it's going to be fun. I hope and pray, because so many things are being revealed. So let's read this together for all of us. There has been some confusion about the image that was taken with Code Pink volunteers and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, you know me, opportunistically approached our volunteers in a parking lot on the Hill, and she requested they take a photo together. Oh, isn't that great? But wait a minute. If they knew who MTG was, they could have said no. Our volunteers weren't sure how to respond and immediately reached out to us about what happened after the fact. Oh, come on. You took a picture with somebody. Relax. Look, in 5 years, AI is going to take over, or if that doesn't happen, in 159 years, a big old asteroid is going to hit the planet and the human species is done. Relax. This picture was not initiated by our organization. So they're saying that this picture was not initiated by their organizations. Wait a minute. But she agrees with you. We will continue to organize against war and demand our resources be reinvested into human needs like housing, universal health care, and education. There's a difference between anti-war and not wanting funding for Ukraine war. To be anti-war, you must be an internationalist. Danica explains more here in an interview done before this video was taken. So hold on. This is a little bit video here from the Hill, and let me only be clear here. Just only be clear here. Let's go ahead and play it. Let's pull this up here.
You know, the Republicans aren't exactly against funding for Ukraine for the same reasons Code Pink is. They don't want to funnel all of this war money, you know, the Pentagon budget and foreign military aid, into things like that matter, like healthcare, accessibility, and that sort of thing.
I think it's a really important point, Danica. And I love to mention that when we had an opportunity to interview Marjorie Taylor Greene on this show, and I asked her more broadly whether she supported cuts to the military budget, she said no, despite being opposed to the war in Ukraine. So I do think it's important to ask conservatives where they do plan to spend the money in the interim.
Yes, very interesting. But again, I want to be clear here. Look, I'm glad that at least somebody is speaking out against the war. And I do want to bring out a couple of people as well. Because again, Code Pink, you know, you've been utterly silent since 2020. I mean, you too have been eating that brunch. So you start off on a very interesting note, because I saw too, oh my goodness, Code Pink being Bernie Sanders is calling for their arrest. But I want to pull it up here from Due Dissidents, good friend of the show's. 8 Republicans accomplished more in the past week for the anti-war cause than your entire organization has in its 21-year history. If you've been around for 20 plus years and you're still hoping the Democrats will do some good, you are a waste of time. And yet you're acting like you know what it really means to be anti-war. Laughable and pathetic. So see, don't worry, folks. I'm just not going to say, oh, look at Code Pink, they're doing great things. I might start off like that, but it's a wonderful act. Because again, it's important to question everything and everyone. Courtney L. Conover says, been calling them out with evidence of their dark money, including George Soros and other BS, including Trump derangement syndrome, flipping about anyone not being fully on board with Democrat cults. I got threatened to not show up at their rally in a DC march because I have a Harry Potter purse and their tongue basing of AOC. Not to mention all their fake theater arrests were where the charges always get immediately dropped the moment they get to the station. Huh? Isn't that interesting? Same thing happened with the Bernie Sanders event. I wonder, is it all intertwined and connected? They knew yesterday they wanted to go to explicitly off-limit areas of the Capitol, knowing they'd be arrested and let go for good PR. If you don't get how corrupt and controlled opposition they are yet, you are not paying attention. Again, she's the real anti-war activist. So what can we take away from this? What can we take away of Bernie calling for the arrest of 11 protesters? What can we take away from, Code Pink of all things, being called out for their utter hypocrisy? Because, again, they do worship at the altar of the Democratic establishment. What can we all learn from this? A lot of these activist groups that I covered from 2017 up until 2020 are nothing but talk. Now, I'm being kind. If my colleague Daniel was here, he would be far more brutal. Because what we witnessed here in Chicago, and we're only speaking about events that we saw here in Chicago, a lot of those groups were quiet after 2020. A lot of those groups fell off the radar. A lot of those people who associated with the resistance against Trump, got intertwined with a lot of liberal groups, Democrats, etc., etc., etc. Now, is Bernie Sanders a cuck and a failure and a hypocrite? Oh, 100%. But so is that theater show of Code Pink. Now, it's interesting to hear those statements from those people, and yes, those statements are true, but the organization itself is hypocritical. Now, is Marjorie Taylor Greene the greatest anti-war activist ever? No, but it does take a lot of courage to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be funding Ukraine. Maybe we should be calling for diplomatic talks. Maybe it needs to end, which it should, as it should. And I'm glad there's some voices calling it out. I wish that the quote-unquote progressive lawmakers would actually follow through with what they said that they would be, but I guess that's the case, and they should tell you, never hero worship politicians, but also be hesitant of major groups that have been around for 20 plus years and never got anything done, but yet continue to be connected at the hip of a political party. Break away from the two-party system now more than ever. And once again, just to pour some salt on the wound, Senator Bernie Sanders, you had a movement, and so many people had trust in you. And when you let them down, other opportunistic people came along to try and carry on your name, or either that, try and create what you made. You're a fraud, a hypocrite. And like all these institutions, all these groups that came around in 2016, your time has come, and now it has ended. It's time for everyone to get up and move away.